Good afternoon. Thank you very much for a very grand introduction. It is the best I have had so far in my life. Now, it gives me a big burden to live up to that reputation that he declared. My talk this afternoon will be on the business and investment opportunities, and I was listening to the two previous speakers, and I hope I can match the quality of the presentation both of them bring to this very distinguished audience. As the moderator has mentioned, ASEAN is a very attractive group of countries, 10 countries. Professor Kawani was talking about the diversity of ASEAN. ASEAN has the regions. We have all the regions. We have all the races that you can find in the world in ASEAN. So diverse, but yet the region actually has stick together quite well. The question is, what is going to happen going forward? My talk today, I'll actually reintroduce the topic of ASEAN so we have a better understanding of this institution and its cooperation activities. And then I look at peeping into the future a little bit for the region. And from that vantage point of the future, which is not present, we look at what ASEAN can do, actually, for us. What are the opportunities there? The past 30 years of ASEAN economic growth, ASEAN is growing at about 8.1% in the past 30 years, average per year, past 30 years. This is something that is not accomplished by many countries in the world. How can ASEAN do that? What is happening? What are the secrets of that? But yet, during these 30 years of experience, ASEAN has gone through many traumatic experiences. Most of these are not our own doing, but it's something that we inherit or impact by the rest of the world. And ASEAN is responding very quickly to each of these events. You can see that the growth rate of each of these big events is a V-shaped type of a return. In the 1980s, we were hit by the Latin American debt crisis. That is the first dip, this one. Of course, this is the biggest one ASEAN has ever experienced, 1997, the financial crisis. We dropped very low. But you look at the GDP growth of the 10 ASEAN countries, since then, it has been moving steadily upward. The average growth rate from 2013 to the rest of 2019. This is the IMF database, and it stopped at 2019 so far. We will be growing at almost 7%, which is something that is remarkable. The secret of ASEAN is we are very diverse. One country go down, another country go up. That's why we balance ourselves out, right? Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Alatas saying that ASEAN has many faces. We face with a very adverse person, we send a tough guy to talk to them. When we need to deal with something that is very soft, we send another country to talk to them. So we are so diverse. At the same time, ASEAN was looked at as something that is also very soft, very weak. ASEAN has no centrality. You have no identity. Sometimes you're very tough, sometimes you're very soft. But in fact, that flexibility is what ASEAN is all about. We use the diversity to basically bring out our strength. These are the events. ASEAN was born as a group in 1967. In the 1967 years, I'll take you through this very brief history. Oops. Ah, what is going on? Excuse me. All right. Can you bring this back? ASEAN was born in 1967 in the midst of the Cold War. After 1945, after the war, all ASEAN countries are developing our nation state. So we are very egoistic. You know, we boost our national ego. By doing that, we start building our own territory. And the first problem is you have territorial dispute. And the territorial dispute is, and that is where at the top, is when you have a lot of problems that you cannot talk to another country at all. Because every inch of your land is won over sweat and blood and tears of your predecessor. So you can't give up an inch. But if you ever known a border, you know that when you draw a line on the map, that may be in your map in a line, small line, but in reality, that may be 5 kilometers wide, you know, in reality. So it is a very imprecise, identification of territory. But yet, we fight over 1 square inch. Just imagine the kinds of problem that we are going through here. And that is what happened during the night, right after the war, around the 1960s. Therefore, the 5 ASEAN leaders, then 5 countries, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Philippines, come together and say, let's agree on this one very basic principle, and that is we are not going to wage war on each other. Any problem we have, we talk about it. With that agreement, it comes a lot of good things. That kind of understand, that kind of basic principle, the value of that is enormous because it provides a lot of certainty. So the first thing that ASEAN has done, and the value of that still, we are still using all that today, is this very basic principle that we will not wage war on each other. You just imagine applying this to business. It's a lot of truth, a lot of cooperation, and some of the talk we talk about this afternoon, actually we're all about this. We are really pitched to fight each other in all aspects of life. And this is a very true explanation of what is the benefit of cooperation, that one particular area. But then between the second wave, 1975 to 1979, ASEAN is rising. If you look at the graph before, remember that graph? We are rising very well. And in fact, in the early 1990s, the whole 1990s to 1990 to 1996, ASEAN and the average is growing about 12.5% a year. We are growing very well. Everybody is growing very nicely at that time. And then we were hit by the financial crisis in 1997 because we are actually a little bit too happy with ourselves. We are borrowing too much, not careful enough. But after in 1997, during that period of time, industry is growing, so ASEAN has a lot of initiative to bring in industrialization into the region. The ASEAN preferential trading arrangement is a trade agreement, so we reduce tariff for each other. Then we have brand-to-brand complementation to allow automotive in particular, with the same brand, can move their product across the country without any tariff. But that culminated in a very sizable effort to do an ASEAN free trade area in 1992, in fact. I was there in 1993 to implement the ASEAN free trade area. That is the first start of integration of the whole ASEAN economy. At that time, there are 6 member countries. Brunei joined ASEAN in 1984, immediately 1 week after it became independent. So ASEAN gives Brunei a very nice protection of independence. But okay, in 1997, in 1996, ASEAN started the ASEAN Cooperation in Finance because before 1997, we already know that there are some problems with us and we have to really work together because ASEAN altogether at that point of time share less than about 2% of global GDP. It's very tiny. Right now we share about 3%, which is also not very big, but yet we wield a lot of power. We started the Chiang Mai initiative. Actually, the negotiation is 1999, but it was signed in the year 2000. But the ASEAN plus 3, ASEAN plus Japan, Korea, and China, we start to come together and start working together because the issue we know is beyond the 10 countries. So first, you can see that in the early period, ASEAN really get together to really build confidence among themselves, and then start to expand into other countries. 2007 up to present. After that, 2005, problems started in the US, but ASEAN is already consolidated itself, very careful with the financial matters. That saved ASEAN from the calamity of the financial crisis in 2007, 2008. Not all of it, we still got affected, but I think ASEAN ourselves are doing quite well. So ASEAN deepened the cooperation. In 2007, ASEAN started ASEAN Community Initiative. We want to integrate the ASEAN into one community, right? One community, not only economics, but social and also political security. So there are three main areas. I'll come to that in a little while. But what is important is we are deepening our cooperation with the plus 3 on so-called non-traditional security issues, like, for example, food security. There's a right reserve that are agreed upon in 2001, actually, and we started implementing that. At the same time, the forum had expanded to include the East Asia Summit, which has 18 countries. So 10 ASEAN countries, Japan, Korea, China, which we call ASEAN plus 3. Then we have India, Australia, and New Zealand, so that's 16. All these 16 countries we have FTA with. And then we added Russia and the US to form the East Asian Summit, which started in 2005, because the group is now looking at something that is much broader than itself. All these happen because it all come from ASEAN. Actually, ASEAN responding to the needs that are going around the region. So ASEAN is a responsive institution. If ASEAN is a responsive institution, then what's next? So I peep into the future a little bit. There are these 9 factors, but I won't go into all the details there. The most important thing is what is the global economic phase that are going to become the environment for ASEAN in the next few years. We know that US and the EU economic recovery will not be coming very soon. So in the next 5 to 10 years, they will probably resurrect themselves. But then you can see that both US and the EU are very inward-looking in the process of recovery. So they're looking for the market within themselves. The trade between Asia with EU and US, if you look at the trade value, is now declining because both the US and EU are now becoming more inward-looking. In the next few years, that will continue on. So Asia is now left with no choice, but Asia have to trade among each other. So the future direction of trade is very certain that it will be very much between, the growth will be within the Asian economy. How far? It still needs to be worked on, right? It is not very clear, but the direction is very clear. Why is that happening? Partly because I just mentioned that the two giants in the world are become more inward-looking. Therefore, the rest have to basically integrate among themselves. This is the growth. This is the GDP in 2013 of 10 ASEAN countries, altogether 2.4 trillion US dollars. It will become 3.6, an increase of 1.2 trillion US dollars in the next 5 years going forward. And this is from IMF forecast data, right? One very interesting thing that we have, or there are a few interesting things, is number one, the world is growing from about 75 trillion to 100 trillion in around 2020, let's say, a 35% increase. This 35% increase, out of this 35% increase, 16% will be coming from Asia. This 16% of 35 is about 45%. The 45% of the global growth in the next 5 years will be coming from Asia. Out of that, 36%, about 10% or 9.8%, will be come from Northeast Asia, which is Japan, Korea, and China. These three guys here, okay? They account for about 37% of the growth in the world in the next 5 years. ASEAN is not very big, but what is important is in 2013, which is 2 years ago, Thailand is the second largest economy. Of course, Indonesia with its 250 million people is number one economy, right? Thailand is number two. In 2019, Indonesia is still number one, 41% growth, but Philippines now become number three. Malaysia become number two, 71% growth. Philippines, 90% growth in the next few years. This is something that we have to look at. Thailand is being dropped from number two to number four because we are growing at only 27%. Because of what? Because of the political uncertainty we're encountering at the moment. I think probably Dr. Virachai mentioned this morning about the problem that we encounter. But that is one picture. We have seen that the trade among Asia will have to increase. Another very important dynamic in the region going forward in the next 5 years, same kind of table. If you look at the world, population growth, population is 7 billion now, will be 7.5 billion, an increase of 6% going forward. This 6%, 3.69% or 55% of this growth, of population growth, will be coming from Asia. So Asia accounts for 55% of the total population growth in the next 5 years. Okay, and ASEAN is not very big. The biggest growth will be coming from, this is South Asia. This is mainly India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, 3 countries. They will be accounting for about 30% of total population growth in the world in the next 5 years. Okay? Now you look back at this, and you find if you impose this population growth into these pictures and this trade flow going forward, the question is, where are these additional people will be accommodated? Can they still find food to eat? Where are they going to work? Where can they generate the income? It's a huge problem that we're encountering. On top of this, we have the aging population, and we have the climate problems. Food production is not going to do that well because of the climate situation. If the water level, sea level rises, all the river basin, major river basin will be affected. The Mekong River Delta over there, hidden, is producing about 20% of total rice production. Together with the Brahmaputra River Basin, produce about 20% of total population, total output of rice in the world at the moment. They will be flooded. So where are these rice going to come from? So that is a challenge in the future. These people in Asia, about 50% of them will become a middle class. This picture shows This is an old picture that shows that right now, I would say right now, about 1.5 billion people are middle class. By this year, 2030, half of the world population that are in the middle class level will be in Asia. So we have a huge increase in this consumer group that are going to be in Asia, right? We're going to have a lot of poor people that will be expanding in the size. And we will have China, which is aging, and they are not really increasing the population that much, but most of them will be big consumer. One big issue that is emerging is a food availability issue. When people have more income, the first thing they do is they migrate into the city. No farmers. In fact, in China, right now, 50% of their population is in the urban area. And like many countries, Thailand in particular, we are facing with rural sectors who is producing food, but nobody wants to stay there because the price of food is low. Why is the price of food low? Because all the governments are protecting the consumer in the urban area. Why the consumer in the urban area protected? It's because they have political power, because they are more concentrated, so they can vote. When they have vote, they have more power. The people in the rural areas have less vote, because they are, getting them together is much more difficult. Therefore, what happened is people are, the agricultural sector is penalized. The price of food is very low. I look at the price of few food actually, rice, wheat, corn. The price index in the 1990s, up until now, show that rice price has not been increasing very much. The price of wheat, which is important food, is a bit higher growing up. Price of corn is going up very fast. Why? Because price of corn is used by for animal feed and eaten by the chicken. The price of meat has increased, so is the price of corn. But the price of rice stay low. Why? Because the producer of rice are usually in the remote areas. They don't have much water. So that is the dictum we have now. Food price will be a problem. No incentive there. Food production will be a problem. In fact, I have one very specific example, which is rice production in China. China produced 140 billion tons of rice, of the 450 tons of rice that we produce in the world. So they're producing almost like 1/3 of the world rice production. And most of the farmers are now going into the city because the manufacturing sector is growing very fast. So the production of rice has declined. They going through a very big mechanization program, but yet rice production is still not enough. So China is importing more and more rice going forward. The question is, where you get all this rice from? So what China does actually is starting to grow rice in Africa and other countries to keep the food security issue in the country control. But aside from that, China is investing very heavily in other countries on rice, like Cambodia. Also, they buy a lot of rice from Thailand now. They're investing in Myanmar and also in Laos. And if there's a chance, of course, they'll invest a little bit more in Vietnam. Food security going forward. These are the key sectors that will be impacted by those events that I mentioned. Food will be one very big area. The second is the finance, the area of finance. We are going through a period where there's a global adjustment with so many QEs in many countries. If the QEs work, things become stabilized. The next question is when they have to pay back for the QE. then what will happen to the global finance situation? We haven't seen the impact of that, the economic crisis yet. Okay, a lot more is coming to us. The question is for Asia, what can Asia do to really protect itself? Energy, we see the price of energy going down. Should we consume more, or how should we manage this energy going forward? Connectivity is a big issue now because everybody now is using handphone, and if when you come into a room and there's no Wi-Fi or you can't get a telephone signal, you feel very insecure now. So it becomes a necessity in life, like electricity. A couple of days ago in Washington, D.C., there's a blackout. And, that is a national security issue. So in the near future, not only blackout is a problem, but connectivity, this internet connectivity is going to be a big problem. These are all security issues, but it is not about the borders anymore. It's not a traditional security issue where you're invading another territory anymore. The issue have changed. Security issue have changed. The face of the players in security have changed. These are the new environment that we are in. Trade is going to be one of the fastest growing sectors in the near future, because for Asia, for ASEAN in fact, I'm talking about the key factors that affect the region, because ASEAN is in between. We probably have learned that China has adopted a policy to look west. So is Japan, so is Korea. India adopted the policy to act east, not only look. They say, China, you just look, but I have to act already. So they act east. So you look at that, ASEAN is right in between there. So this is why this region has to really look at what the region has to do to really accommodate for this growth coming to us in the future. And trade will be one of the major sectors that will be growing. Tourism expanding very quickly. You go out, I think, into the shopping center in front of us here, half of them probably are Chinese traveling to Thailand. And they enjoy themselves over here, looking for, the lost city that they seen in the picture. There are a lot of tourists coming from China, I think, in terms of millions at the moment. But the tourism pictures in ASEAN also is expanding enormously quickly. Once people have income, right, your consumption package will include travel, going to some other places. That's why this budget are now being looked at, and it generated quite a lot of income for all the countries in ASEAN. And ASEAN has a good reputation of being very generous, very hospitable for all the tourists. So it is expanding very quickly. Logistics service definitely together with trade. It's a derived demand from the expansion of trade. It will expand very quickly. And business services. So these are the few sectors that I think will have enormous opportunity going forward in the region. If you're looking for investment, these are some of the key areas. Now, take a peep at ASEAN cooperation. What is it all about? How much time do I have? ASEAN is building an economic, is a community. ASEAN economic community is one of the three. We have the political security, we have the social and cultural community also. In the political security, one very big forum ASEAN has is called the ARF, ASEAN Regional Forum, which is run by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and there are 21 countries that come to me to talk about security issues. Not only about ASEAN, but it has been also act as on behalf of others also, like, for example, issue about the North Korea. Among the 6 countries, they can't talk among themselves. So they bring it down to the ASEAN Regional Forum to talk about it. So it become a very important regional organization to look at all these issues. Okay, I have to go quickly. Now, in the ASEAN Economic Community, which is one of the 3, they call 4 pillars. In fact, there are 4 main objectives of the ASEAN Economic Community. The first one is to form a single market. How do you form a single market? You have good flow around freely, you have service flow around freely, you have investment flow around freely, labor and capital also freely. So there are 5 mechanisms in there. Then there are some focus in some priority sectors, but the key thing is goods, services, investment, capital, and labor are flowing freely within the region, the skilled labor, not all kinds of labor. So that will create a single market. The second pillar is to look at competitiveness of the region compared to other regions in the world. The third one is to have equity, basically more inclusive growth. And the fourth one is to integrate into the world economy. Now, these 4 objectives, the first one, the single market. In fact, I gave some details that you can read about it, but essentially, we reduce import duties and facilitate the movement of goods. Right now, over 95% of the goods trade in ASEAN have 0 import duty. So you can say that we have a free trade area within the region already. And we applied, we are still working on this so-called ASEAN single window, where all the custom procedures of goods, standard and so forth are focused in one office, and we can clear that together in one go. Still working on that one. But essentially, goods flow among ASEAN countries are essentially free, no tariff, and very, very smooth. Services, we still have some problem in the implementation. We still need some liberalization of some other sector, like finance sectors are not fully open yet. Transport sector are still a problem. Liberalization of investment. Again, we allow investment now. I think the agreement is we allow 70% ownership of ASEAN investors to invest in other ASEAN countries, not in most sectors, not all. Capital market. Now you have a free trade and goods are moving around freely. You should have an ASEAN payment system to accommodate the payment system. So we are working on that. Skilled labor, like nurses, like accountant, professional services type things. We are still, we work on it. We have a mutual recognition arrangement, but implementation, each country still have to work on it. But in all, we essentially have a single market for many sectors already. Yeah? People will dispute that. Competitiveness in all ASEAN has improved. But Thailand, of course, if you look at this, Thailand is not doing too well compared to other countries. We were number 28 in the world, but now we are 38. Actually, this year also not very good. Vietnam has also go down, but Cambodia 111 to number 9, ranking 95. So there are improvement in some countries. Inclusive growth is one of the biggest problems in ASEAN. You look at this graph, you can see that you look at these 2 graphs are for Singapore and Brunei. The GDP per capita has been increasing very fast. Singapore will be almost like is 56,000 per head, and all these other countries you read from this axis. Most of the countries who have less than 2,000. Right, so we still have that gap, and it can't go away easily, even though the smaller countries like Laos, Cambodia are growing at 10-12% a year, but the gap is still very wide. It takes a long while. But this is the area that I said the ASEAN Economic Community has failed very much because they're focusing on promoting the small and medium enterprises, but that is not the answer. Some of the discussion we have early on, a more innovative way of sharing the benefit of growth is needed to really move this forward. Integration into the global economy, ASEAN is now trying to have this regional comprehensive economic partnership where all the 16 countries, all the, Japan, Korea, China, India, Australia, New Zealand, together with ASEAN, form one free trade group. This is basically to form a single market, like what we did in ASEAN. So goods can flow freely, market become bigger, more attractive to investment. Still under negotiation, should be completed by the end of the year. Whether it's complete or not, this is going to be one of the very major construction of institution that Asia will have to have. We have to go through this, like it or not. A lot of problem because of differences. No? But going forward, you look at my earlier pictures where we have to really move goods around, and you don't have an institution to govern that, we're going to have problems. Right? So this is coming, like it or not. Now this is a very complicated picture of this cooperation around the region. Now this is another activity that ASEAN is doing. We call the ASEAN Master Plan for connectivity. We're building roads, building rails, to really, what we do, the key thing that we'll achieve by the Master Plan for connectivity is linking Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. Why is that so important? The volume of goods that are going through between these two regions I mentioned, China, Japan, and Korea, and Asia, South Asia, and others. Each year is about $2 trillion US. You can drop the cost down by 10%. You just imagine the benefit of that. But the key thing there also is right now, most of the goods are flowing through to Malacca Channel. And Malacca Channel is already at its capacity. So to move more goods in through that is going to be quite difficult. Therefore, there were many initiatives, and this is not only starting, but started by the Japanese many years ago to build this corridor across, so you can bring the goods down here to the Philippines and others down here, and then move it across, go to another market. 1,800 kilometers of road and rail. So that is a project. If it works, and it will have to work, there will be a major change in the population location around this region in the near future. They have some simulation on that. This initiative was proposed in 2010, but up to now, a lot of problems of implementation because nobody is taking up the investment. Why? Because these infrastructure cut across many countries. Each country has its own law. Each country has its own regulations. Now, you have to really, work with 3 or 4 countries. And in some countries, there are tribes, tribal groups that you have to deal with. So it's not that easy. So this is what happened. But there is enormous potential in this. If we can solve the first problem I mentioned, which is this political problem, the territorial issues. I'll skip this. Now, frankly, what is the contribution of AEC to Asia? The major contribution of AEC, the ASEAN Economic Community, is it has created a set of world-class regional economic institutions. Not only trade and investment, but actually we have finance, we have food, we have many other areas of cooperation, which is ready to really become a platform for really move the whole Asia, other countries together, to do what? To basically keep your political issue outside of this cooperation. Or else you're going to have food problems, energy problems, you're going to have food, energy, connectivity problems, and financial problems. So if you just keep this political issue aside, then work together, then we're going to have a very big potential for Asia going forward. Now, increase in certainty for the business is something that ASEAN has done for the group. Reduction of transaction costs is okay. Harmonization of system across. But I think what is the most important thing is these two other parameters here. There's an emergence areas which is very Asian. ASEAN has been criticized for its sort of non-transparency, informality, and also using a lot of personal relationship. There are good and bad in there, of course, but it was the institution that has been there for ages. It also exists in other society, but we usually call this nepotism and so forth. I think the next speaker will take us through that, but in fact, there are some merit to this institution, and maybe some way that we have to marry the transparent Western culture of rules and regulations and the informalities of personal relationship. Now, many of the examples, particularly the example that was gave to us in the previous speaker about this, the communal finance and so forth, 90% of that success came from personal relationship because we know each other, we trust each other. Now, I think that is a positive spin of the future. You have to look at that and how do we really bring the strength of what we have in Asia to bear to bring this for the future. Compromising is one of the ways that we work in ASEAN. I've been with the Secretariat for many years, and this is where we really build this trust with each other. Sharing of benefit. There is no perfect sharing. There always somebody benefit you more than and so forth. But if you start become jealous, there's no equality. I don't think there is equality anywhere in the world, but you have to go to a level you can accept certain level of differences. And that is what ASEAN is all about, actually. That institution is about compromising. How can we benefit from ASEAN? Very quickly, we have to do proactive planning. We have to really look outside of each ASEAN country and, in fact, the whole region in order to really reap the benefit of ASEAN. In fact, intra-ASEAN trade is 25%, so 75% is outside. You're looking for the benefit of 25%, you are investing and looking at the wrong place. Intra-ASEAN investment is less than 20%, 19% on the average. You're looking for benefit of investment for ASEAN, only in ASEAN, you're looking in the wrong place. Finding out about how to use them. Now, the ASEAN Free Trade Area when we started is a document with about 12 articles, 5 pages. It's not a big agreement. So this is where we are. We have to really build ourselves and get ourselves working on this. Approach the government offices, get them to work for you, not they working, we working for them. Well, in summary, the ASEAN Cooperation has created prosperity in the region. It has accomplished many things, but going forward, this is a core institution which needs a lot of nurturing. It's still evolving, and I think the benefit is for all of us is there, but we have to work on it. Thank you very much.